A massive stone clock sits high on a remote mountain peak. This is the Bighorn Medicine Wheel, and it holds a secret connection to the stars. Perched over 9,600 feet in the rugged Bighorn Mountains, this colossal structure is not in Montana, a common mistake, but definitely in Wyoming. Yet that original confusion itself hints at its vast cultural importance across the northern plains. The wheel is an ancient, silent observatory, a masterpiece of engineering built of stone centuries before any European set foot on this continent. The central mystery is stunningly simple. Why did ancient peoples undertake such immense effort to build this enormous wheel in such a harsh environment? We will uncover the true purpose of its spokes, finding that they were not merely decorative but pointing to specific, powerful stars. Stay with us to discover how the builders achieved perfect alignments with the stars Sirius and Aldebaran, essentially building a permanent star map on Earth. How could they have possessed such precise astronomical knowledge long ago? What spiritual power did they seek to harness from the light of these distant suns? What do you think the sky looked like through the eyes of these ancient observers? The mountain air is thin and biting at over 9,600 feet. Here a colossal circle of stones rests on a bare Wyoming peak. This is the Bighorn Medicine Wheel. Many people call it the Montana Bighorn Wheel, which only underscores how important this structure was to the entire northern plains region, stretching across state lines that did not exist centuries ago. It is a masterpiece of ancient engineering and it dominates the skyline. This giant rock clock, built centuries before any European ever saw the American continents, feels impossibly old and impossibly difficult to construct. What truly motivated people to haul thousands of pounds of rock up this difficult terrain just to arrange them in a circle? The central mystery lies within this effort. The wheel itself is 80 feet across, anchored by a large central cairn, a mound of stones, and surrounded by 28 spokes reaching out to the rim. These spokes are not just random decorations, they are silent pointers, celestial arrows aimed at the sky. For generations, the wheel has held deep spiritual significance for tribes like the Crow and the Cheyenne, among others. It is not merely a ruin, it is a sacred site where prayers were offered and visions were sought. Its exact age is still debated by archaeologists, with estimates ranging from 300 to 700 years old for the visible structure, with some evidence of even older uses of the site. This long history confirms its profound cultural importance as a communal gathering place connected to the spirits and the seasons, but the spokes point to something far more specific than just the changing seasons. The most shocking discovery about the Bighorn Wheel is that it functions as a precise astronomical observatory. For years, observers focused solely on the obvious alignment with the summer solstice sunrise. That alignment is clear and powerful, marking the longest day of the year. However, a much deeper, more complex secret was locked inside the rest of the stones. These other spokes reveal an intricate knowledge of distant, powerful stars. Think of the wheel as a map laid out permanently on the ground, charting points far beyond our solar system. Scholars realize that the ancient builders had achieved perfect, deliberate alignments with two of the brightest stars in the night sky, Sirius, the dog star, and Aldebaran, the eye of the bull. This raises the critical question of how people without written language or modern instruments could have possessed such breathtaking astronomical precision. What power did the light of Sirius and Aldebaran hold for these ancient skywatchers? How did they manage to map the heavens onto the rough earth with such accuracy? The answer lies in the precise geometry of the Bighorn Wheel itself. To feel the magnitude of this mystery, we must first understand the structure as a physical object. The wheel is essentially a massive stone calendar or clock laid out on the barren ground, 80 feet across from one edge of the rim to the other. Imagine a large tennis court, but built entirely of rough stones placed carefully by hand. The perimeter is defined by the rim, a circle of stones about 10 feet wide in places, heavy enough to withstand centuries of high mountain winds and snow. At the center of this huge circle sits the central cairn. This is the heart of the wheel, a large mound of piled stones standing roughly 3 feet high. If you stood on that central cairn, you could survey the entire massive structure. From this central point, the 28 spokes radiate outward like the cutting edges of a giant, ancient gear. These spokes are not just single lines of rock, they are carefully constructed stone pathways, each one leading directly to the outer rim. The number 28 is significant. It corresponds to the average number of days in a lunar cycle, suggesting a timekeeping function intimately tied to the cycles of the moon. But what about those stellar alignments, the ones pointing far beyond the moon? Those alignments require incredible forethought because the stars do not stay still. Due to a slow wobble in Earth's axis called precession, the exact position of any given star changes over centuries. This means that to align a stone structure perfectly with a bright star like Sirius or Aldebaran, the builders had to know precisely when the wheel was being built. They were essentially placing a timestamp in the stone. A certain spoke pointing to the summer solstice sunrise suggests a general timeline, but another spoke pointing precisely towards Sirius rising on a specific day in the year acts like a celestial clock hand, locked into that moment in history. When measuring the angles of these spokes, researchers discovered they marked the exact rising points of Aldebaran and Sirius at the time the wheel was originally constructed. This meant the builders were not just observing the stars casually, they were calculating the future movements of the sky and designing a permanent record of the cosmos, embedding astronomical data into stone hundreds of years ago. Designing a permanent record of the cosmos meant building an uncompromising structure. The sheer physical reality of the Bighorn Wheel reveals the dedication and skill of its ancient builders. Stretching roughly 80 feet across, the wheel is essentially a massive circle composed of locally sourced stones, primarily limestone and dolomite. These materials were hauled up the mountainside and then arranged meticulously on this exposed peak over 9,600 feet high. This is a staggering effort in an environment characterized by thin air, extreme temperatures, and brutal winds. Why choose a location so difficult? It was intentional. This high altitude ensures an unobstructed view of the horizon, absolutely necessary for accurate celestial observations. At the center of the 80-foot circle stands the main hub, the central cairn, a sturdy mound of stones about 3 feet high. Radiating out from this hub are the 28 spokes, carefully constructed lines of rock extending to the outer rim. We already noted that 28 is the number of days in the lunar cycle, linking the wheel intrinsically to the moon's predictable rhythm, but the wheel is more complex than just spokes and a center. Along the circumference of the wheel, there are 5 smaller, less prominent stone mounds called the exterior cairns. These cairns are the critical sighting stations, the true heart of the observational equipment. To achieve perfect alignment with a star rising on the horizon, an observer would stand at the central cairn and sight a specific star at the moment it appeared, using one of the exterior cairns as a precise marker. Imagine the meticulous planning involved. Every stone had to be placed just so, calculating where a particular star would appear hundreds of years later. This was not a casual arrangement of pretty rocks. This was high-precision engineering carried out on the most challenging building site imaginable, simply to hold the light of distant stars in stone. The immense labor invested into this exposed mountaintop speaks volumes about the spiritual and scientific importance of these alignments to the ancient people who built this silent observatory. This immense labor raises one of the biggest paradoxes of the Bighorn Wheel. Who exactly built this cosmic clock? The current scientific consensus is that the site was used and maintained by numerous native groups over the centuries, but was primarily constructed by the ancestors of the Crow people, also known as the Apsaluk Nation. This attribution is based on generations of tribal oral history and archaeological evidence found at the site. The wheel's exact origins are shrouded in time because the builders possessed no written language to leave behind a historical record in the European sense. We rely instead on the stories passed down through generations and the physical data collected by archaeologists. Imagine trying to piece together the history of a great cathedral solely from the arrangement of its stones and the distant echoes of songs sung inside. That is the challenge presented by the Bighorn Wheel. The traditional narratives of the Crow people often link the wheel and the mountain itself to stories of creation, vision quests, and the deep connection between the earth and the heavens. It was a place where priests and spiritual leaders went to seek guidance and draw power from the celestial connections. Interestingly, the wheel's design shows influence from, or at least a shared knowledge base with, other ancient cultures across the North American continent. Several other smaller medicine wheels exist across the northern plains from Alberta, Canada, down into Wyoming, but the Bighorn wheel stands apart due to its enormous size and the stunning precision of its stellar alignments. The fact that the construction date of the visible structure is estimated to be between 300 and 700 years ago means the wheel was built centuries before the arrival of horses and metal tools to the region. The architects and laborers who hauled these stones up the mountain worked solely with muscle, wooden levers, and perhaps rawhide ropes. Their tools were simple, but their mathematical and astronomical knowledge was anything but simple. This makes the accuracy of the Aldebaran and Sirius alignments even more astonishing. The true genius lies not just in the labor, but in the knowledge they brought to the task. They were highly skilled scientists who understood celestial mechanics well enough to embed complex timekeeping data into a permanent structure. The absence of written records does not mean an absence of learning. Instead, the wheel itself became the textbook, the library, and the lasting monument to their mastery over the sky. It is a profound testament to how knowledge was preserved and passed down through observation, tradition, and monumental construction. What level of dedication would it take to dedicate your life to observing the sky in a world without electric light? The question of identity still echoes across the vast Wyoming peaks. While the Crow Nation holds the deepest connection and stewardship over the Bighorn wheel today, the true original builders remain a profound historical mystery. Archaeologists and historians agree that this site was immensely significant to numerous cultures, including the Shoshone, the Cheyenne, the Lakota, and others across the sprawling northern plains. But who first hauled that heavy limestone up the mountain and positioned the central cairn? The artifacts recovered from the site tell a story of longevity and continuous use rather than a single founding moment. Scattered pottery shards, tools, and other small artifacts offer clues to the peoples who visited and maintained the wheel over centuries. Because the soil is thin and the wind's abrasive, older, more ephemeral evidence may have been entirely eroded away. What remains suggests that the wheel was not a static monument built by one person at one time. Instead, it seems to have been a living, evolving landscape of worship and observation, growing and being modified with each passing generation. One compelling theory suggests that the structure may have started much smaller, perhaps built by a different, earlier culture whose name is now lost to time. Later, as this initial structure fell into disrepair or was rediscovered, the ancestors of the Crow and other nations adopted it, enhancing its size and precision to the form we see today. Imagine the wheel as a massive, ongoing construction project that spanned generations, each group respecting the sacred intentions of those who came before while adding their own astronomical knowledge and spiritual practices. For the Crow Nation, the wheel is intimately tied to their oldest stories and traditions. Oral histories speak of the wheel as Arkadush, or the circle of the mountain. It is a place reserved for profound vision quests and sacred ceremonies, a direct vertical line connecting the terrestrial world to the cosmos above. The continued use of the site, even today, is proof that the wheel fulfills an enduring need for spiritual connection to something larger than ourselves. It reinforces the idea that the builders were not just engineers studying the stars in isolation, but priests and shamans who saw no separation between science and the sacred. Their astronomical precision was simply another pathway to understanding the divine order of the universe. What deep truth about the nature of time and the heavens did they seek to preserve in stone? The true genius of the Bighorn wheel lies far beyond the obvious. For many years, the only astronomical function recognized was the clear alignment with the summer solstice sunrise. That alignment, marking the longest day of the year, is certainly impressive. On June 21st, an observer standing at the central cairn watches the sun rise precisely over a specific exterior cairn along the rim. This marker is indisputable. It confirmed the wheel was a solar calendar, a means of tracking the changing seasons crucial for agriculture, hunting, and ceremony. But if the wheel was only about the summer solstice, why the other 27 spokes and 4 other exterior cairns? Why build so large and complex a structure? Researchers suspected that the other spokes pointed to something equally important, something more difficult to track than the readily visible sun. The moment of discovery arrived when scientists began considering the positions of the fixed stars, those celestial beacons that appear to remain constant in the night sky. Unlike the sun and moon, which follow predictable paths within the zodiac, these distant stars pose a challenge for ancient observers because their rising points shift very slowly over centuries due to the Earth's subtle wobble. This complex movement is called precession. Think of a spinning top that is slowing down. It begins to wobble, causing its axis to trace a slow, wide circle. The Earth does the same thing, making one full precession cycle every 26,000 years approximately. This wobble changes where a specific star appears to rise on the horizon over vast periods of time. Therefore, if a stone marker is aligned to a star, that alignment will only be perfect for a relatively short window in history. By measuring the angle of the main solstice marker and then measuring the angles of the secondary cairns, researchers could mathematically calculate the time in history when the structures were in perfect alignment with targeted stars. This process revealed the initial astronomical surprises. Two specific powerful stars emerged as deliberate targets, Aldebaran and Sirius. Aldebaran, the eye of the bull in the constellation Taurus, is a brilliant orange giant. Sirius, the famous dog star, is the brightest star in the entire night sky. Both are immensely significant across many ancient cultures worldwide, often tied to deities, cycles of flood, and seasonal change. The specific spokes at Bighorn were found to align perfectly with the heliacal rising of both Aldebaran and Sirius. Heliacal rising is not just when a star appears. It is the first day it can be seen briefly on the eastern horizon, just before the sun rises, before the light of dawn washes it out. For ancient peoples, this precise moment was the true beginning of the star's annual cycle, a powerful event used for timekeeping and prophecy. The realization that the wheel captured these two specific stellar events, alongside the summer solstice, instantly transformed the Bighorn Wheel from a simple seasonal calendar into a sophisticated, interconnected astronomical masterpiece. This was far beyond basic observation. This represented generations of dedicated, rigorous sky mapping, all without a single telescope or mathematical text. The summer solstice alignment at the Bighorn Wheel is a powerful sight, but it is also almost expected. Many stone circles and ancient structures across the globe are built to mark the sun's annual rhythm, tracking the longest and shortest days of the year. In fact, most of the other known medicine wheels scattered across the northern plains also feature some form of solar alignment. Marking the longest day, the summer solstice is a crucial piece of ancient agricultural and ceremonial life, providing a reliable calendar. But this is where the Bighorn Wheel parts company with nearly every other similar structure. It has a far more complex and demanding agenda written into its stones. It was in the 1970s that dedicated researchers began to challenge the assumption that the Bighorn Wheel was merely a simple solar calendar. Early archaeoastronomers, particularly Dr. John Eddy, looked at the remaining 27 spokes and wondered why so much effort had been wasted just to track a single day. Why the extra cairns, the small stone mounds positioned so carefully around the perimeter. Dr. Eddy and his team started measuring the precise angles of these secondary alignments, seeking patterns beyond the sun. This shift in focus revealed the true daunting ambition of the builders. The wheel was designed to capture not just the light of our local star, the sun, but the light of distant, immensely powerful fixed stars. This was not just timekeeping, it was cosmology in stone. The targets were not random. They were specific celestial beacons that held immense cultural and mythical power for the people of the northern plains. When the research confirmed the deliberate alignments with Sirius and Aldebaran, it instantly elevated the Bighorn Wheel from an interesting ruin to a scientific marvel. These stars were essential. Sirius, the brightest star we can see, and Aldebaran, the eye of the bull, were signals from the cosmos, marking sacred events and important spiritual cycles. These stars were anchors in the sky, and the ancient builders knew exactly how to capture their rising points with uncanny accuracy, locking the spiritual power of these distant suns into the rugged Wyoming mountainside for centuries to come. Capturing the light of Sirius and Aldebaran was the primary goal, but these stars are not isolated points in the vast cosmic ocean. They are part of a larger, immensely important pattern. Many ancient cultures, including the builders of the Bighorn Wheel, understood the power of constellations and star groupings. Here, the focus widened specifically to include the constellation Orion. For these ancient skywatchers, Orion was perhaps the most crucial constellation of all, often seen as a spiritual hunter or a sky god figure. The Bighorn Wheel does not have explicit markers for every star in Orion, but it does target stars directly connected to the constellation's most famous neighbors. Consider how these three major targets, the Sun, Sirius, and Aldebaran, combine to paint a complete picture of the celestial year. Sirius is the anchor of the winter triangle, forming one corner of a vast, easily recognizable shape that dominates the winter sky. This star is the brightest object in the constellation Canis Major, the Great Dog, hence its nickname the Dog Star. Aldebaran, on the other hand, is the brilliant, reddish eye of the bull in the constellation Taurus. Taurus sits directly adjacent to Orion, meaning that Aldebaran and Orion rise and set together throughout the annual cycle. Thus, by locking in the precise rising points of Sirius and Aldebaran, the Bighorn Wheel effectively mapped the entire winter sky. It was a mechanism for predicting the appearance and disappearance of the most important celestial figures in the cold season. The ability to track these groupings allowed the ancient people to harmonize their ceremonial and physical lives with the rhythms of the heavens. For example, the precise knowledge of when the brilliant Sirius would make its heliacal rising, appearing just before the sun, could have signaled the start of a specific hunting season or a time of crucial spiritual renewal. The builders were not merely designing an instrument to track isolated points, they were building a permanent functional monument to the entire cosmic landscape, focusing especially on the powerful stars that govern the darkest, coldest months. We must remember that in a world without electric light, the winter sky was an overwhelming spectacle, and knowing exactly when and where these powerful stellar deities would return held immeasurable power. The Bighorn Wheel was designed to mark far more than just the winter sky. Its overall framework provided a complete celestial clock vital for ceremonial life and survival. While Sirius and Aldebaran were the main stellar anchors, they were simply 2 points on a much larger map. Understanding the full astronomical genius of the builders requires recognizing that the entire structure worked as a stellar guide for the annual cycle. This allowed the ancient people to harmonize their lives with the heavens. They knew when to migrate, when to begin fasts, and when to conduct specific ceremonies that required alignment with the cosmos. These were not random cultural practices but were driven by precise astronomical data. For example, some researchers believe that other cairns and spokes may point toward the rising or setting of other critical stars. Imagine the precision required to track stars as distant and varied as Rigel, the brilliant foot of Orion, or perhaps Capella, the goat star, the sixth brightest star in the night sky. The exact alignments for these secondary stars are harder to pin down due to the effects of precession over the centuries. However, the potential for these secondary alignments strongly suggests that the Bighorn Wheel was intended to be a multi-phase observatory, capable of tracking at least 5 or 6 different celestial events throughout the year. The presence of these potential markers reinforces a crucial understanding that the ancient builders were anything but primitive. They were highly skilled scientists and mathematicians who saw the sky as their dependable calendar and their ultimate clock. Their ability to calculate the appearance of stars centuries in advance and then lock those calculations into a movable stone demonstrates a level of astronomical sophistication that rivals many of the world's most famous ancient observatories. These people were masters of their environment and the heavens above it, using the permanent stone on the mountain peak to translate the temporary cycles of the cosmos. This monumental effort speaks to the deep importance of aligning human spiritual practice perfectly with the divine rhythm of the universe. Unraveling the star mystery requires focusing tightly on Aldebaran, the bright orange giant. This powerful celestial beacon, known as the Eye of the Bull in the constellation Taurus, holds a key position in the Bighorn Wheel's design. The builders were not just interested in any bright star. They chose the alpha star of a major constellation that dominates the winter sky. To understand the significance of Aldebaran, we must appreciate its celestial role. It is a star that follows. Aldebaran rises and tracks across the heavens just before the mighty constellation Orion, the hunter. For ancient observers, the rising of Aldebaran was the signal that Orion, the most spiritually significant figure in the winter sky, was soon to follow. This made Aldebaran a cosmic herald, an unmistakable announcement of the change of seasons and the arrival of the cold months. The spoke at the Bighorn wheel that locks onto Aldebaran is aligned to capture its precise heliacal rising, that moment when it first peaks above the horizon, just before the sun's glare overwhelms it. This annual event was not just a beautiful sight, it was a precise marker used for calendar calculations, often signaling the time for specific rituals or the start of the buffalo hunting season, when herds would be grouping for the winter. Imagine the intense ceremony surrounding this event. The priests and spiritual leaders would have gathered at the wheel, waiting for that single, perfect flash of orange light on the eastern horizon. The fact that the Bighorn wheel builders went to the extreme effort of hauling thousands of pounds of stone up a remote mountain to lock in this single point in time reveals how crucial this celestial follower was to their culture. It was more than a star, it was a timekeeper and a message built into the rock of the mountain for all generations to read. Why was knowing the precise moment of a star emerging from the sun's shadow so important that it dictated monumental construction? The light that reached the Bighorn wheel from Aldebaran traveled across 67 light-years of space. This fiery orange star is often called the Eye of the Bull because it sits prominently within the constellation Taurus. Aldebaran is not just a bright light in the sky. For innumerable ancient peoples, it was a profound navigational and timekeeping marker. Across many cultures, the heliacal rising of Aldebaran was a signal, a fixed point in the celestial calendar announcing significant seasonal change. For example, some traditions used its appearance to predict the spring rains or the onset of planting season. This star was a reliable guidepost in a world without accurate clocks. At the Bighorn wheel, the alignment is incredibly specific. One of the exterior cairns, those strategically placed small stone mounds, points directly to the exact spot on the horizon where Aldebaran would have made its critical heliacal rising centuries ago. This precise alignment suggests the star was integral to the annual ceremonial calendar of the ancient builders, likely marking the end of winter and the beginning of the crucial spring migration cycle for the buffalo herds. Think about the complexity involved. To align a stone marker perfectly with a star means accounting for the Earth's long-term astronomical mechanics. Because the Earth wobbles slowly on its axis, the star rises a tiny bit differently each year. This phenomenon precession is the biggest challenge for archaeoastronomers studying the wheel. They use the Aldebaran alignment almost like a cosmic clock face to calculate the precise period when the alignment was perfect. This stellar accuracy is what helped confirm the initial construction and major use period of the Bighorn wheel, establishing that these alignments were set into stone roughly 300 to 700 years ago. It shows that the builders were not just casual sky gazers, they were dedicated astronomers capable of embedding deep calculations into the very structure of the mountain. They built enduring monuments to fleeting cosmic moments. Knowing the exact alignment of Aldebaran is key to solving the deepest riddle of the Bighorn wheel, its precise age. The problem of dating this structure is tied directly to that slow, centuries-long celestial drift called precession. If the Earth were fixed perfectly on its axis, the stars would always rise in the exact same spot on the horizon every year. But as we discussed earlier, the Earth acts like a massive, slowing top, wobbling slightly as it turns. This wobble means that over long periods, the apparent rising point of every star changes. Stars slowly shift their position across the sky. This is where the astronomical genius of the Bighorn wheel builders truly shines. They locked in a specific moment in time. When archaeoastronomers examined the angle of the Aldebaran spoke, they realized the alignment was not perfectly accurate today. It gradually shifted over the centuries since the wheel was built. Because astronomers can precisely calculate the rate of this shift, they were able to run time backward, mathematically correcting for the wobble. This essentially unwound the clock of precession to find the exact historical moment when the stone cairn and the rising point of Aldebaran were in flawless alignment. This calculation acted as a cosmic timestamp. The mathematics indicated that the spoke pointed perfectly to the heliacal rising of Aldebaran sometime between 400 to 700 years ago. This range confirms the archaeological findings gathered from artifacts at the site. The wheel itself is a monumental, non-verbal birth certificate, dated by the fixed stars themselves. This method of stellar dating is incredibly powerful because it relies on unchanging, universal astronomical laws, rather than fragile artifacts or potentially unreliable historical accounts. It confirms the builders were working with an astonishing level of precision, placing stones with the knowledge that their alignment would be perfect only for a few generations before the slow hand of precession moved the star out of position. Imagine planning a structure that will only work perfectly for a few hundred years, but will then stand as a testament to that perfect moment forever. This level of foresight suggests a deep respect for celestial permanence and the ephemeral nature of human time. The secret to dating the Bighorn Wheel with such precision is held within the Earth itself. It is the slow, majestic wobble of our planet's axis that acts as the final arbiter of the wheel's age. This phenomenon, astronomical precession, is difficult to conceptualize because it happens so slowly, stretching across 26,000 years for a single cycle. To visualize it, think of a massive spinning top in slow motion. As the top begins to lose momentum, the axis around which it spins starts to tip and trace a wide circle in the air. The Earth does this exact same thing. Our planet's axis is not fixed perfectly in one spot relative to the distant stars. It is slowly tipping, causing the point in the sky that marks our North Star to change over millennia. This wobble means that the rising point of stars on the horizon shifts over vast stretches of time. 1,000 years ago, the star Aldebaran appeared to rise at a slightly different position than it does today. 1,000 years from now, it will have shifted even further. The ancient builders of the Bighorn Wheel were not only aware of this slight shift, they accounted for it. By aligning their stones to capture the exact heliacal rising of Aldebaran, they were essentially building a perfectly calibrated time machine. The alignment became a unique fingerprint of the sky at the moment the stone was placed. When researchers mathematically corrected for the known rate of precession, they found the alignment with Aldebaran was perfect around the time of the 1400s. This specific window in history, which coincides with the 300 to 700 year range suggested by artifacts, locks the wheel to its precise age. The very act of building the wheel required the builders to project the movement of the stars into the future or the past. They had to know exactly where Aldebaran would appear on the horizon, not just this year, but 500 years from their time. This suggests that the Crow ancestors and neighboring peoples were meticulously tracking the sky for generations, passing down astronomical data through oral tradition. They built a permanent calendar that could be read for centuries, a silent, enduring time capsule waiting for modern science to unlock its secrets. It challenges us to rethink what we consider to be ancient knowledge. The cosmic clock ticking at the Bighorn Wheel was set not just by Aldebaran, but by an even brighter jewel in the sky, Sirius, the dog star. This giant star, blazing 8.6 light years away, is the undisputed king of the night sky, outshining every other star we see. If Aldebaran was the herald of the coming winter, Sirius was the profound spiritual anchor of that darkest season. For the ancient builders of the wheel, the alignment with Sirius held massive significance, tying the structure not only to the winter sky, but potentially to vast cross-cultural mythologies. Across the ancient world, from Egypt to the Mediterranean, the heliacal rising of Sirius signaled major events such as the flooding of the Nile or the onset of scorching summer heat. At the Bighorn Wheel, the alignment is different, calibrated precisely to mark a key moment in the Northern Plains calendar. Just like the Aldebaran alignment, there's a specific exterior cairn on the 80-foot rim that points directly to the spot on the eastern horizon where Sirius would have made its dramatic heliacal rising centuries ago. The fact that the builders captured both the solar solstice and the rising of these two immense fixed stars demonstrates an astronomical triple threat. They created a permanent timekeeping device encompassing the sun, the seasons, and the distant cosmos. This required generations of dedicated, uninterrupted sky observation, passed down meticulously from elder to apprentice. Imagine the precision required to track the faintest initial glimpse of the brightest star. The moment Sirius would emerge on the horizon just before the sun was a powerful spiritual event, likely marking the apex of the winter ceremonial cycle for the Crow ancestors. The sheer effort to lock in the light of the dog star, using heavy stone high on a rugged peak, confirms that the builders saw these alignments not merely as scientific data points, but as direct portals to the divine. What hidden spiritual power did they believe they were drawing down from the light of this distant, brilliant sun? The light of Sirius, the brightest star we can see, held a profound, almost terrifying power for the ancient world. Known as the Dog Star, this brilliant sun dominates the heavens. Across continents and cultures, Sirius was never just another point of light. It was often viewed as a divine messenger or a harbinger of cataclysmic change. Think of ancient Egypt, where the heliacal rising of Sirius, its first appearance before the dawn, signaled the imminent annual flooding of the Nile River, the lifeblood of their civilization. This star was simultaneously a calendar, a clock, and a prophecy. At the Bighorn Wheel, the builders honored Sirius with the same reverence, locking its light into the high Wyoming peak. Just as with Aldebaran, there's a specific exterior cairn along the 80-foot rim that aligns perfectly with the spot on the horizon where Sirius would have performed its dramatic heliacal rising centuries ago. This was not a casual sightline. It was a precise, calculated astronomical alignment designed to capture the exact moment this immensely powerful star returned to the morning sky. But what did the rising of the Dog Star mean for the nomadic and semi-nomadic plains tribes who used the Bighorn Wheel? Unlike the Egyptians who tied Sirius to the harvest and the Nile's flood, the Crow ancestors and neighboring nations connected Sirius to their own unique cycles of survival and spirituality. The heliacal rising of Sirius would have been a fixed, dependable signal marking the dead of winter, or possibly the transition into the early spring. This precision was vital because their lives depended entirely on the massive herds of buffalo. The movement of the herds was tied intrinsically to the seasons. A specific stellar event, such as the rising of Sirius, could have ritually marked the beginning of a crucial winter hunt when the buffalo gathered in large groups. Or perhaps it signaled the time for the annual sun dance ceremony, a period of immense spiritual renewal and sacrifice. These ceremonies often included vision quests where spiritual leaders would trek to isolated, sacred places like the Bighorn Wheel to seek contact with the divine. Standing at the center of the wheel, watching the light of Sirius peak over the distant aligned stone, must have been an overwhelming spiritual experience. The star's precise position served as a cosmic confirmation that their practices were perfectly aligned with the divine rhythm of the universe. The Bighorn Wheel was thus a permanent, stone-etched clock that harmonized the fierce reality of seasonal subsistence with the profound requirements of their spiritual world. What other mysteries about their sacred calendar might be locked within the subtle placements of those remaining spokes? The true lock on the Bighorn Wheel's secrets is deciphering why the heliacal rising of Sirius was so important. This highly specific astronomical event, the moment the star first becomes visible just before dawn, was a critical signal for almost every culture that tracked it. But the meaning of Sirius rising changes drastically depending on where you stand on Earth. For the ancient Crow ancestors and neighboring tribes perched high in the Wyoming mountains, the appearance of the Dog Star meant something very different than it did for those in the Egyptian desert. This was not a signal for a flood or for the hottest weeks of summer. This was a direct signal about the harsh reality of the northern plains winter. The precise date of the Sirius alignment at the Bighorn Wheel suggests it may have coincided with the deepest part of the cold season, perhaps marking a time of immense hardship and spiritual need. This alignment would have confirmed the deepest ebb of the annual cycle, a time when food was scarce and survival depended on communal strength and spiritual connection. The wheel provided a reassurance, a permanent marker tethering them to the predictable rhythm of the heavens, even when the earthly environment was at its most unpredictable. Standing on that vast exposed peak in the middle of winter, watching that single brilliant point of light emerge exactly over the stone marker, must have been an overwhelming moment of cosmic confirmation. It was proof that the universe was ordered, that time was marching forward, and that the return of life and warmth was guaranteed. This level of precise astronomical tracking confirms that the spiritual life and the survival of the community were entirely intertwined. The ability to forecast this critical celestial event, locking it into the enduring stone, gave the ancient builders immense power and control over their own calendar and ceremonies. It transformed the remote mountaintop into a vital connection point between the fierce wilderness and the infinite security of the night sky. What else did the builders embed within the spokes that speaks to their spiritual devotion? The precise moment of Sirius rising marked the true beginning of the year for many ancient societies. This heliacal rising, that split second when the star emerges from the sun's glare before dawn, was not merely a pretty sight. It was the definitive astronomical trigger for the annual cycle. For agricultural communities, this event could signal the end of a barren season and the start of a planting cycle that dictated survival. For nomadic, hunting-focused societies like those who used the Bighorn Wheel, the rising of the dog star acted as the ultimate cosmic clock. The ability to predict this event with uncanny accuracy proves that the ancient astronomers possessed an astonishing mastery of celestial mechanics. Tracking the sun is relatively simple. It follows a clear, predictable path across the sky every day, but tracking a star like Sirius requires an understanding of long-term cycles, specifically the subtle, slow shift caused by the Earth's wobble. This is nuanced, difficult timekeeping, proving the builders were engaged in far more than simple seasonal observation. The solar alignments at the Bighorn Wheel were practical measurements of the seasons. The stellar alignments, particularly those targeting Sirius, suggest a much deeper spiritual or ceremonial purpose. Sirius was seen as a powerful entity, a stellar deity or spirit leader. By locking its precise rising point into the permanent stone cairns, the builders were essentially creating a permanent conduit, harnessing the spiritual power and energy embodied by the dog star. They were drawing down the divine order from the cosmos to align their earthly rituals perfectly with the rhythm of the universe. This was not just science, it was sacred geometry on a monumental scale, translating the light of a distant sun into a reliable, unmoving spiritual truth for generations of worshippers. What specific ceremony was regulated by the exact return of this brilliant, powerful star? What specific ceremony was regulated by the exact return of this brilliant, powerful star? The answer may be hidden within the wheel's most enigmatic feature, the 28 spokes. These spokes are not random lines drawn in the dirt. Each one is a carefully constructed stone pathway radiating from the central cairn to the outer rim. The number itself, 28, immediately suggests a cosmological link to the moon. The moon takes roughly 28 days to complete its cycle from new moon to new moon, what is known as the lunar cycle. For ancient peoples, the moon was the first and most dependable calendar, governing tides, female cycles, and often spiritual renewal. This specific number suggests the Bighorn Wheel was designed to track the movements of the moon alongside the movements of the sun and the most important fixed stars. It was not a single-purpose observatory, it was an integrated system, linking the fast-moving local timekeeper, the moon, with the slow-moving distant timekeepers, Sirius and Aldebaran. If we view the 28 spokes as markers for the 28 days of the lunar month, the entire wheel transforms into a massive, permanent lunar calendar. Imagine the central cairn as the starting point, and each spoke as one passing night under the mountain sky. This would allow priests and shamans to precisely calculate the start and end of specific lunar ceremonies, ensuring their rituals were conducted under the most auspicious celestial conditions. But here is where the deeper enigma emerges. Only 5 or 6 of those spokes are confirmed to align with specific celestial rising points like the summer solstice, Sirius, and Aldebaran. What do the other remaining spokes point to? Some researchers suggest that the non-stellar spokes merely function as a way to divide the lunar month into precise segments, confirming the moon's path. Others theorize that the remaining spokes represented different clan territories or spiritual domains within the Crow and neighboring nations' cosmological views. They were perhaps dividing the celestial world as much as the terrestrial one. The fact that the builders combined the moon cycle with the highly specific, long-term alignments of fixed stars demonstrates their holistic view of the cosmos. They saw the heavens as a unified, interconnected mechanism. The 28 spokes represent the bridge between the immediate changing world, the lunar cycle, and the eternal fixed world of the stellar gods, anchored by Sirius and Aldebaran. This unified design confirms the wheel was a sacred device for total timekeeping, designed to harmonize human life with the entire rhythm of the universe. The 28 stone spokes radiating across the Bighorn Wheel hold the key to understanding its full calendrical power. This precise number is not accidental. It is a direct and powerful homage to the moon, the original timekeeper for humanity. Astronomically, the number 28 correlates strongly with the lunar sidereal month, the time it takes for the moon to return to the exact same position among the fixed stars. This cycle of moon phases was absolutely vital to the daily and ceremonial lives of the ancient Plains people. Unlike the modern Gregorian calendar we use today, which is based primarily on the sun, the ancient calendars were often dual purpose. They needed to track the predictable, massive cycle of the sun for the seasons, but they also needed to track the faster, more subtle cycles of the moon for their rituals and spiritual practices. The inclusion of 28 distinct spokes confirms that the Bighorn Wheel was designed to be an astonishingly comprehensive celestial instrument. It functions simultaneously as a solar, a stellar, and a lunar calendar. This integration is what makes the wheel truly unique among ancient observatories. The solar alignments track the longest and shortest days. The stellar alignments precisely mark the return of the powerful star gods, Sirius and Aldebaran, anchoring the long-term cycle of precession. And the 28 spokes provided a mechanism for tracking the lunar cycle, allowing priests and leaders to perfectly plan their fasting, vision quests, and ceremonies, ensuring these sacred acts coincided with auspicious lunar periods. Imagine the builders sitting on that freezing mountain peak, not just tracking the sun or a star, but watching the moon glide over the stone spokes day by day, month by month. They were integrating all three celestial bodies into a single cohesive system built of permanent rock. This holistic view of the cosmos highlights the profound wisdom of the builders. They did not see the sky as divided into separate parts. The sun, the moon, and the distant fixed stars all moved in concert, playing their part in a singular, divine rhythm. The Bighorn Wheel was built to harmonize human existence with that perfect, unbroken celestial orchestration. This level of astronomical integration proves that the builders were not just casual observers, but dedicated keepers of profound cosmological knowledge, meticulously passing down their understanding across generations simply by pointing to the heavy stones. This incredible level of astronomical integration suggests the Bighorn Wheel was far more than a calendar. It was a spiritual observatory. The very center of this massive 80-foot structure is the central cairn, a mound of piled stones standing roughly 3 feet high. If the spokes and the rim were the mechanics of the clock, this central cairn was the vantage point, the sacred heart of the entire operation. It was here that the Crow ancestors and neighboring spiritual leaders would stand to conduct their observations and ceremonies. This was not a place for casual visitors. The central cairn was reserved for priests, shamans, and those undergoing profound vision quests, seeking direct connection with the celestial powers. Imagine the scene centuries ago. A spiritual leader stands upon the mound, looking out across the rim, using the smaller exterior cairns as precise sighting points. As the sun begins its dramatic rise on the summer solstice, or as the brilliant light of Sirius first appears on the eastern horizon, the observer is standing at the exact intersection of earth and sky. The meticulous design ensured that the observer, standing at the center of the wheel, was perfectly aligned with the returning celestial deities. This position was not purely scientific. It was intensely ceremonial. The act of observation became a form of worship, a physical alignment of the human spirit with the divine order of the universe. The power of the wheel lay in its ability to harness the predictable rhythm of the cosmos and translate it into a tangible, earthly location. By performing their rituals exactly at the moment when the starlight crossed the stone alignment, the ancient peoples were confirming their place within the cosmic harmony. This central position made the cairn a sacred anchor, providing a foundation of spiritual security rooted in the unchanging patterns of the heavens. It was the permanent point of stillness in a world defined by movement and the harsh struggle of survival. What spiritual power did they feel flowing down from the light of these distant, perfect suns? The power of the Bighorn Wheel was concentrated in the 5 exterior cairns. These small stone mounds positioned along the outer 80-foot rim were the critical sighting stations. They were the crosshairs of this massive astronomical instrument. But to reduce them merely to scientific markers is to miss their true purpose. These cairns were deeply sacred places, positioned at the very nexus where the physical world met the spiritual. Imagine standing at the central cairn, the heart of the wheel, and sighting the rising of Sirius perfectly framed by the specific exterior cairn designed for that purpose. That alignment transformed the mundane act of looking into the profound act of communion. The stone itself became a portal. For the Crow ancestors and other users of the wheel, this mountain peak was high enough to be close to the Creator and the sky world, the dwelling place of the star people. Vision quests, fasting, and intense ceremonial practices were essential parts of the plains' spiritual life. A young person or a spiritual leader would climb the mountain to seek a vision, often remaining alone for days without food or water, waiting for guidance from the divine. The Bighorn Wheel provided the perfect setting for this intensely personal search for truth. When the stellar alignments were perfect, when the light of Aldebaran or Sirius returned to the horizon precisely over a cairn, that moment was the cosmic confirmation that the star people were communicating. The exterior cairns became the receiving stations, drawing down the spiritual energy of the distant stars and anchoring it to the earth. They were intentionally placed at these observation points to ensure that the act of astronomical measurement was inherently a spiritual practice. This meant the ancient builders did not separate science from faith. Tracking the stars was not a purely intellectual exercise. It was a holy duty, ensuring that their ceremonies were timed perfectly with the divine rhythm of the universe. The precision of the alignments was proof that they were listening correctly to the voices of the heavens. This integration of the spiritual with the scientific is the wheel's most enduring mystery, testifying to a people who saw the cosmos not as a cold mechanism, but as a living, breathing, sacred entity. The precision of the Bighorn Wheel raises a profound question. Did the ancient builders of the northern plains share astronomical knowledge with massive, distant civilizations, cultures like the Maya in Central America or the pyramid builders of ancient Egypt? It seems impossible that such separate societies, divided by oceans and continents, could possess the same complex understanding of the sky. Yet the wheel's focus on the heliacal rising of Sirius forces us to consider the echoes. In Egypt, the rising of the dog star was the most important astronomical event of the year, signaling the flood and the new year. For the Maya, their complex calendar systems were rooted in the perfect tracking of celestial bodies, leading to the creation of observatories that precisely tracked planetary cycles. While the Bighorn Wheel lacks the monumental size of the pyramids or the intricate carved glyphs of the Maya, its functional sophistication is undeniably in the same league. It demonstrates the same fundamental realization. That time, prophecy, and survival are all intrinsically linked to the perfect, predictable movements of the stars. This universal emphasis on the same star, Sirius, suggests something more than coincidence. Did ancient observers across the globe, irrespective of language or location, arrive at the same crucial astronomical conclusions because the sky itself offered the same undeniable truths? When we recognize the Bighorn Wheel as a highly advanced instrument of timekeeping, it ceases to be merely a local curiosity. It becomes part of a global, ancient tradition of sophisticated sky watching. The fact that numerous other medicine wheels, while smaller and less precise, are scattered across the North American plains suggests that this form of celestial architecture was a widespread, enduring tradition. The Bighorn site, however, stands out as the master clock, possessing the deepest stellar knowledge. It is the clearest surviving evidence that pre-contact peoples were highly skilled archaeoastronomers, embedding their science into the permanent landscape. The wheel is a silent rebuttal to the idea that complex astronomy was exclusive to the Old World. It proves that generations of rigorous observation on the lonely Wyoming peaks yielded the same cosmic wisdom revered in the Nile Delta and the rainforests of the Yucatan. The sophisticated astronomy found in Wyoming echoes across the rest of the ancient world. When we talk about perfect stellar alignments, our minds often jump immediately to structures like Stonehenge in England or the massive temples in ancient Egypt. These iconic sites were built for the same precise reason as the Bighorn Wheel, to capture and celebrate the perfect rhythm of the cosmos. For example, the Great Pyramids and many Egyptian temples were meticulously oriented to the rising of Sirius, the very same star whose light was locked into the Bighorn stone. In the Yucatan Peninsula, the Maya built immense observatories specifically designed to track the precise cycles of Venus and other planets, showing a mathematical mastery of the heavens that astounds us even today. What this shared global obsession confirms is that the Bighorn Medicine Wheel was not a random pile of rocks or a mere spiritual curiosity. It was a fully functional, highly sophisticated scientific instrument, fitting perfectly into the worldwide phenomenon known as archaeoastronomy. This field studies how ancient peoples understood and used the sky for practical and ceremonial purposes. The stunning difference here is that the plains builders, working with simple tools and raw muscle high on a remote peak, achieved the same level of astronomical precision as the monumental civilizations of the Nile and the tropical rainforests. This was not cultural borrowing, this was independent innovation. The ancestors of the crow and their neighbors, through generations of rigorous observation, discovered the same crucial celestial patterns that obsessed the rest of humanity. They prove that profound cosmological truth is not exclusive to specific geography or advanced written language. The sky offered the same dependable, universal laws to everyone who bothered to look closely enough. The Bighorn Wheel stands as a permanent testament to the genius of the ancient Northern Plains people, an observatory built not with gold or massive carved blocks, but with the rough, humble stone of the mountain itself. This mastery over the fixed stars elevates the structure from a local sacred site to a global masterpiece of ancient science, demanding we ask what other lost knowledge exists without a written record. This mastery over the fixed stars raises a final, vexing question: where is the written record of this staggering astronomical knowledge? The Bighorn Wheel is a testament to perfect stellar calculation, a building project that required generations of dedication. Yet the people who built it, the ancestors of the crow and their neighbors, relied primarily on oral tradition to pass down their histories and their science. This absence of written text in the European sense is perhaps the most profound part of the mystery. We are accustomed to finding historical blueprints or detailed mathematical tables when encountering such advanced engineering, but here the knowledge was contained entirely within the minds of the priests and shamans, meticulously memorized and transmitted across generations. Imagine the complexity of this oral library. It was not enough to simply tell the next generation that Sirius rises over that stone. They had to transmit the precise calculations for the Earth's wobble, the rate of precession, and the exact time window when the alignment would be perfect, all without the aid of pencil, paper, or mathematics books. The wheel itself became the textbook, the permanent physical mnemonic device that guaranteed the knowledge would not be corrupted or forgotten. The stones served as the visual cues, the anchor for the detailed, chanted histories and instructions. When a young apprentice was taught to track the rising of Aldebaran, he learned the story of the star, the spiritual meaning of the moment, and the exact way to confirm the rising point against the stone cairn. The precision embedded in the rock forced them to maintain the precision of the oral tradition. This system of knowledge transfer worked perfectly for centuries, allowing the wheel to function as the celestial clock for its users. But when European contact began and the lives of the Plains tribes were dramatically disrupted by disease, conflict, and migration, that chain of oral transmission was severely strained and sometimes broken entirely. The builders did not lose their knowledge because they failed to write it down. They lost the context and the continuity necessary to maintain the complex, living oral tradition that housed the precise astronomical science. When the ceremonies stopped or the priests passed away without an apprentice, the wheel silently remained, its perfect alignments waiting for a modern observer to reverse engineer the ancient knowledge. What other astonishing scientific insights might we have missed because we dismissed oral tradition as mere folklore? What other astonishing scientific insights might we have missed because we dismissed oral tradition as mere folklore? This is the inherent tragedy of studying the Bighorn Medicine Wheel. For all the precision encoded in the stone, for all the genius of the builders, the precise, technical explanations for all 28 spokes and all 5 cairns were never written down. The builders of this sky clock did not leave behind mathematical texts etched into stone tablets like the Babylonians, or detailed calendar notations like the Maya. Their entire astronomical library was carried within the minds and memories of their priests and leaders. Imagine the responsibility. The most critical knowledge about seasonal timing, spiritual renewal, and the very structure of the cosmos depended not on a physical library, but on the perfect, unbroken chain of memory passed from one generation to the next. The Bighorn Wheel itself was the primary teaching tool, the permanent illustration for the complex verbal lessons. The elders would stand at the central cairn and point, using the precise stone alignments to trigger vast, detailed cosmological narratives. This system worked flawlessly for centuries, but the arrival of European contact brought disruption on a scale that fractured the continuity of life itself. The introduction of disease, the constant warfare, and the forced displacement from sacred territories fundamentally destabilized the societies that maintained the wheel. When an entire village faced a devastating smallpox outbreak, the knowledge that died with the priests and shamans was gone forever. It was not just a loss of history, it was the loss of meticulous, hard-won scientific data about time and the fixed stars. Unlike a written text that can survive a disaster in a distant vault, the oral tradition is vulnerable to any break in the chain of transmission. The surviving oral traditions of the Crow and neighboring nations hold incredible spiritual insight, confirming the wheel's profound importance and its connection to the stars. Yet the specific technical knowledge about why spoke number 17 aligns exactly to a particular point on the horizon remains shrouded in silence. The mystery is now encoded only in the stones themselves, waiting for modern science to attempt to reverse engineer the lost wisdom. We look at the wheel not as a dead ruin, but as a living question mark, a physical puzzle that challenges us to unlock the secrets held in the memory of the Earth. The Bighorn Wheel did not stand alone on the vast northern plains. It was instead the most magnificent example of an entire architectural tradition. Across the rugged landscape of Alberta, Canada, down through Montana and into Wyoming, dozens of other stone circles are scattered. These are the other medicine wheels, the Bighorn's neighbors. While none achieve the colossal scale or the astronomical precision of the Bighorn structure, their very existence proves that this form of celestial mapping and spiritual practice was widespread among the ancient Plains people. These smaller wheels vary dramatically in size and complexity. Some are tiny, only about 12 feet across, featuring just a central cairn and a few simple spokes. Others are more substantial, showing clear alignments to the summer or winter solstice sunrises and sunsets. The common architecture across all these sites is striking: a circular shape, a central stone mound or cairn, and radiating spokes. This shared design confirms a deep, underlying cultural unity in how these independent nations viewed and interacted with the cosmos. It was a language spoken in stone. The distribution of these wheels suggests they were used by various indigenous groups including the Blackfeet, the Lakota, and the Shoshone, each integrating the structure into their own unique spiritual narratives. However, the Bighorn Wheel was always the master observatory. It possessed the detailed stellar knowledge that the others lacked. The other wheels may have primarily functioned as simpler solar calendars or as highly visible ceremonial sites for vision quests and offerings. They acted as local anchor points for spiritual practice. Imagine the Bighorn Wheel as the central university of astronomy, where the deepest secrets of precession and fixed star tracking were housed. The smaller wheels were the local community centers, implementing the solar and lunar lessons derived from the larger, more complex site. This regional network of stone circles reinforces the idea that the ancient Plains people were engaged in a communal, persistent effort to map the heavens onto the Earth. They were all participating in the same grand cosmological project, ensuring that the rhythm of human life was never out of step with the divine clock ticking high above them. This regional network of stone circles reinforces the idea that the ancient Plains people were engaged in a communal, persistent effort to map the heavens onto the Earth. The stunning truth is that the Bighorn Wheel was not an isolated marvel. It was the crowning achievement of a widespread cultural tradition. As we travel across the northern plains from the rugged peaks of Wyoming up into the vast grasslands of Alberta, Canada, we find dozens of similar structures. These are the other medicine wheels, the smaller, quieter cousins of the Bighorn masterpiece. Take, for example, the Majorville Medicine Wheel in Alberta. It is one of the oldest known complexes, possibly dating back over 4,000 years. While Majorville might lack the precise stellar alignments of Bighorn, it shares the fundamental architectural DNA: a central cairn, a rim, and radiating spokes. This prevalence of similar structures confirms that the Bighorn design was part of a common language, a shared knowledge base across independent nations. These wheels were not built by a single monolithic empire. They were built by diverse cultures including the Blackfeet, the Shoshone, the Gros Ventre, and the Lakota. Each site, however, was anchored to the same core principles of celestial worship and timekeeping. Comparing the Bighorn Wheel to sites like Majorville reveals both consistency and unique differences. Every wheel seems to prioritize the solar alignment, marking the summer solstice. This was the universal calendar function, crucial for survival across the high plains. But while those other wheels focused intently on the sun, The Bighorn builders took the radical step of adding the precise tracking of Sirius and Aldebaran. This suggests a local variation, a specific focus born perhaps from the unique spiritual needs or astronomical breakthroughs achieved by the ancestors of the Crow. The Bighorn site was perfectly positioned high in the mountains for unparalleled viewing, giving its astronomers an advantage over those on the lower plains. This regional context shows that the Bighorn Wheel was not an anomaly, but a purposeful high-altitude refinement of an existing tradition. The builders took a functional calendar design and transformed it into a masterpiece of stellar mechanics, embedding the light of the most powerful distant stars into their magnificent mountain clock. Their decision to focus so intensely on Sirius and Aldebaran elevated the Bighorn Wheel into a category all its own. The stars that guided the Bighorn Wheel were not merely points of light. They were characters in a cosmic drama. Aldebaran, the powerful orange giant whose light was fixed into the stone, held immense cultural significance for the ancient Plains people. For us, Aldebaran is the eye of the bull in the constellation Taurus, but for the Crow and neighboring nations, this star was woven into the fabric of their deepest creation stories and seasonal practices. While the precise details of these ancient star myths were often lost when the oral traditions were fractured, the surviving narratives offer powerful clues. Aldebaran was often viewed as a herald, a messenger, or a key figure in the celestial pantheon, deeply connected to the buffalo. The buffalo was the life force of the plains, providing food, shelter, and tools. Therefore, any star connected to the buffalo cycle held critical importance for human survival. The rising of Aldebaran signaled the arrival of the constellation Orion, which many tribes viewed as a great hunter or a crucial spiritual figure associated with the winter season. The appearance of Aldebaran first was the signal that the hunter was coming. Think of it as a divine road sign in the sky, marking the moment when the herds would begin to congregate for the brutal winter months, making them essential hunting targets. The spiritual leaders who maintained the Bighorn Wheel needed to know exactly when this celestial event would occur to prepare the community for the hunt and for the associated ceremonies of thanks and renewal. Ceremonies often involved mimicking the movements of the stars themselves or conducting specific rituals under the correct alignment. By tracking the precise heliacal rising of Aldebaran, the priests could ensure their actions were perfectly aligned with the sacred time dictated by the cosmos. This confirms that the Bighorn Wheel was not merely a timekeeping device but a sacred instrument of prophecy and communal alignment. The entire structure was a monumental prayer, asking the stars for guidance on how to survive the coming cold. Aldebaran was much more than a star. It was a dependable promise made by the heavens to the people on the earth. Aldebaran was not simply a light, it was a character with immense spiritual power for the ancient mountain dwellers. The precise myths connecting the Crow to this brilliant orange star were transmitted through oral tradition, making exact documentation scarce for modern researchers. However, the surviving narratives and the broader cosmological frameworks of the Plains tribes paint a clear picture of this star as a celestial being or spirit guide. For the Crow, the sky was populated by the star people, ancestors and powerful forces who govern the cycles of the earth. These star people were not distant metaphors. They were real influential beings who could be communicated with, and their movements were direct communications from the divine. Aldebaran, as the eye of the bull and the herald of Orion, likely held a masculine, guiding role, perhaps personifying a chief or a crucial spiritual leader among the star people. This spiritual connection explains the extreme effort of the Bighorn Wheel's builders. They were not just measuring light, they were building a permanent, tangible line of sight to a powerful ancestor. Tracking the heliacal rising of Aldebaran to its specific stone marker was like establishing a direct phone line to the divine. It ensured that the ceremonies, migrations, and crucial buffalo hunts were sanctioned and spiritually aligned by this ancient sky guide. The spiritual significance of the buffalo in their lives meant that any star associated with that animal, or with the season when the buffalo were most crucial for survival, held enormous protective power. The Bighorn alignment with the eye of the bull was a permanent prayer to the spirit of the buffalo and to the star people who watched over the herds. This belief system transformed the monumental construction into an act of profound devotion. Every inch of that 80-foot circle, every stone cairn, was an expression of faith in the guiding power of the cosmos. a belief that the heavens were actively involved in the survival and prosperity of the people on the earth. The astonishing precision of the alignment simply confirmed their devotion and their perfect understanding of the divine order. If the orange light of Aldebaran was the watchful eye of the bull, then the dazzling white light of Sirius was the undisputed spiritual powerhouse. This star, the brightest in the entire night sky, held a unique and profound position in the spiritual universe of the ancient Plains people. For tribes across North America, Sirius was known by names that spoke to its intensity and importance, often referred to as a great dog or a divine wolf, hence its popular modern nickname, the Dog Star. Unlike the slow, reddish glow of Aldebaran, Sirius burns with a brilliant, pulsing light, making it impossible to ignore even in the clearest mountain air. This star's immense visibility ensured its place at the top of the celestial hierarchy, often personified as a powerful guardian or an ancestor responsible for protection and guidance. The spiritual power of Sirius was immense, and its perfect alignment at the Bighorn Wheel cemented the structure's role as a supreme sacred site. The precise heliacal rising of Sirius would have marked an extremely important point in the ceremonial calendar, perhaps signaling the most solemn and introspective rituals of the year, such as the period for great fasting or the preparation for the sun dance. Imagine the spiritual leader standing on the central cairn, seeing the first flash of Sirius over the horizon cairn. That moment would have been a direct, palpable connection to the divine. The light traveling across 8.6 light years was not just photons hitting the eye, it was a spiritual confirmation of the correct path. This focus on Sirius aligns with the global reverence for the star, but here in the high peaks, its connection was uniquely tailored to the survival and belief system of the nomadic cultures. The Dog Star was a consistent guide in an unpredictable world. It was a permanent guarantee of cosmic order, built into the heart of the sacred mountain. The brilliant light of Sirius did more than just mark time. It defined the spiritual landscape of the northern plains. This star, the Dog Star, was inextricably linked to powerful and sacred animals like the wolf and the dog, creatures essential to the survival and mythology of the Crow ancestors and neighboring tribes. In these cultures, the dog was the first companion, a guardian and helper in the demanding life of the plains. The wolf was revered as a powerful hunter, a spiritual brother representing patience and supreme skill in the wilderness. Sirius, the brightest star in the entire sky, was the celestial embodiment of this profound connection, the ultimate divine wolf watching from above. For the ancient builders of the Bighorn Wheel, tracking the rising of Sirius was therefore not a cold, mechanical measurement. It was a profound act of spiritual engagement, a ceremonial welcome to a powerful star person returning to the morning horizon. This star was a living entity, a celestial guardian whose presence was felt both in the sky and on the earth. The energy or power emanating from Sirius was something the medicine wheel was designed to harness, drawing it down through the stone markers to align the human world with the divine. This deep intertwining of science and spirituality is key to understanding the sheer effort invested in the Bighorn Wheel. They did not build the structure simply to know when winter arrived. They built it to ensure that when winter arrived, they were ritually and spiritually prepared, acting in perfect harmony with the powerful forces embodied by the Dog Star. The precision of the alignment was their proof of devotion. If the light of Sirius appeared exactly over the cairn, it meant their prayers were heard and the celestial order was intact, offering guidance and protection for the difficult months ahead. This makes the Bighorn Wheel a true manifestation of sacred astronomy, where the sky was not just observed but worshipped. The mastery of the stars at the Bighorn Wheel was entirely focused on survival. For the ancient Plains people, the difference between life and death often hinged on one thing: the massive herds of buffalo. Astronomers and spiritual leaders were not tracking Sirius and Aldebaran for intellectual curiosity alone. They were charting the heavens to regulate the most critical activity of their annual cycle, the Great Buffalo Hunt. The precision of the stellar alignment suggests that the appearance of these two specific stars acted as a cosmic trigger, signaling the optimal time for specific seasonal migrations and hunting strategies. Think about the intensity of this link. The buffalo were the key to everything, and their movements were tied to the severe seasonal changes dictated by the sun and the stars. For example, once the deep winter was confirmed by the heliacal rising of Sirius, The buffalo herds would generally be gathered in their large, protective winter groups. This precise, predictable gathering made them vulnerable to the strategic, coordinated hunting drives necessary to feed and clothe the entire community through the coldest months. Conversely, the rising of Aldebaran, the eye of the bull, often signaled the transition out of the worst cold, announcing the imminent return of slightly warmer weather and the breakup of the herds. Knowing this exact moment was vital for shifting hunting efforts and preparing for the spring ceremonial cycles. The Bighorn Wheel functioned as a permanent, reliable timepiece that translated the abstract movement of a distant star into practical, life-sustaining action on the ground. The spiritual significance of the stars was perfectly intertwined with the physical reality of subsistence. The priests who calculated the time were simultaneously the providers who guided the hunt, ensuring the community was never out of alignment with the rhythm of the buffalo. This monumental effort to track the most brilliant stars was ultimately the key to ensuring the survival and prosperity of the people on the mountain. This complex stellar knowledge was the ultimate tool for survival and social control. The practical application of the Bighorn Wheel's perfect alignments with Sirius and Aldebaran elevated the structure far beyond a simple curiosity. It transformed the wheel into a guaranteed predictor of the most critical annual events for the people of the Northern Plains. This was not merely about knowing the date, it was about knowing exactly when life-sustaining activities had to begin. The timing of the buffalo migration was everything. These massive herds, upon which the tribes depended entirely, moved according to the seasons. The heliacal rising of Aldebaran, the eye of the bull, might have signaled the precise moment to prepare for the spring dispersal of the herds, meaning a shift in hunting strategy and migration routes. Conversely, the appearance of the brilliant Sirius, the dog star, confirmed the deepest cold of winter, signaling the time when the herds would gather tightly and the difficult, large-scale winter hunts could commence. The Bighorn Wheel provided a celestial seal of approval for these movements, but its power extended even further into the spiritual life of the community. Key ceremonial dances and rituals, such as the annual sun dance, were often timed precisely to celestial events. The shamans and spiritual leaders who commanded the knowledge of the Bighorn Wheel were able to determine the exact, most auspicious day for these critical ceremonies. When the community saw the light of Sirius appear precisely over the stone marker, it was an undeniable sign that the spiritual leaders were speaking with the authority of the cosmos itself. This perfect, predictable correlation between the shifting stars and the necessary actions on the earth granted immense power and authority to the select individuals who maintained this astronomical data. These astronomer priests were not just scientists, they were the indispensable organizers of society. They held the calendar in their hands and could dictate the rhythm of the entire community, ensuring that hunts were successful and ceremonies were potent. This transforms the mystery of the Bighorn Wheel from a purely academic puzzle into a profound insight into survival, social organization, and the very structure of ancient authority. The people who mastered the light of the fixed stars mastered their world. Unlocking the precision of the Bighorn Wheel required a modern set of tools and a revolutionary way of thinking. How could researchers in the 1970s possibly confirm that stones placed centuries ago were aligned to stars whose positions constantly shift? The answer lies in the field of archaeoastronomy, a science that merges the study of ancient cultures with the rigorous mathematics of celestial mechanics. Proving the alignments was an exercise in pure reverse engineering. The modern archaeologists did not rely on digging or fragile artifacts alone. They relied on time, geometry, and a heavy dose of celestial physics. The first and most critical component of the toolkit was the careful, precise physical measurement of the Bighorn Wheel itself. Using surveying equipment, researchers like Dr. John Eddy meticulously charted the exact geographical coordinates of the central cairn and every single one of the 5 exterior cairns. They measured the distance between them and, most critically, the precise magnetic bearing or angle of the spokes leading from the center to those exterior sighting stations. These raw measurements provided the fixed permanent data point on Earth, the direction the builders intended the wheel to point. The second component was mathematics, specifically the application of spherical trigonometry. This complex math allowed the researchers to calculate the rising and setting positions of the sun and specific stars, such as Sirius and Aldebaran, at any given moment in history and at the Bighorn Wheel's exact latitude and longitude. They had to account for atmospheric refraction, the way the Earth's atmosphere bends light, causing a star to appear higher than it actually is. They also had to know the Earth's precise movement and tilt over time. The third essential element was the correction for precession. This slow astronomical wobble is the key to stellar dating. By calculating the rate at which the rising point of Aldebaran has shifted since the year 1000, researchers could mathematically match the angle of the stone marker to the historical position of the star. When the measured angle of the stone perfectly matched the calculated position of Aldebaran in the sky during the 1400s, the alignment was confirmed. This process proved that the builders possessed an incredible, sustained knowledge of the cosmos. The use of this toolkit transformed the Bighorn Wheel from a sacred ruin into a precise scientific instrument, allowing us to read the astronomical data embedded in the stone just as clearly as if the ancient builders had left behind volumes of written calculations. Reading the astronomical data embedded in rough stone required more than just measuring angles. It demanded a full-scale forensic examination of the sky itself. Modern researchers use the revolutionary science of archaeoastronomy to definitively prove the Bighorn alignments were intentional, not accidental. This methodology began with absolute precision on the ground. Researchers did not rely on old paper maps. They used Global Positioning System, or GPS, technology to map the stone structure with millimeter accuracy. They logged the exact latitude and longitude of the central cairn and every one of the exterior sighting stations. This provided the unmoving, permanent earthly anchor point. Once the fixed real-world data was gathered, the work moved into the digital realm. Sophisticated computer models took those precise GPS coordinates and began running celestial simulations. These models held the key to unlocking the wheel's age because they could project the motion of the stars backward in time, accounting for millennia of change. The computer models were programmed to include the exact rate of Earth's astronomical wobble, that slow precession that causes stars to shift their rising points over centuries. They looked for moments in history when the angle measured between the central cairn and a specific exterior cairn exactly matched the calculated rising point of a target star like Aldebaran or Sirius. It was a search for mathematical perfection. When the simulation locked onto a specific historical date, the evidence was compelling. The measured line of sight from the Bighorn stone markers aligned perfectly with the calculated rising positions of Sirius and Aldebaran around the 1400s, give or take a century. The margin of error was remarkably small, sometimes less than 1 degree of arc. This stunning accuracy was simply too perfect to be coincidence. It solidified the Bighorn Wheel's status as a sophisticated, intentional observatory, proving that the ancient builders were tracking and locking in the light of these specific stars at a definitive moment in history. The physical evidence on the mountain was finally translated by modern science, confirming the genius of the skywatchers who built a permanent star chart on a remote peak. The undeniable perfection of the Bighorn alignments with Sirius and Aldebaran did not go unchallenged. For all the mathematical proof, a powerful undercurrent of skepticism has always flowed around the idea of the Bighorn Wheel as a sophisticated cosmic calendar. It is a natural human reaction to doubt that people without metal tools or written geometry could achieve such astonishing astronomical precision. For years, traditional archaeologists resisted the archaeoastronomy findings, preferring a simpler, more earth-bound explanation for the wheel. They suggested the alignments might be purely accidental, the result of random stone placement over hundreds of years of maintenance and modification. This argument, stripped down, holds that if you place enough rocks in a pattern and look hard enough, you are bound to find a few that align with something important in the sky. The idea of accidental alignment is a powerful, elegant counter-argument. However, the sheer statistical improbability of hitting the summer solstice, Sirius and Aldebaran all perfectly in one 80-foot structure, built at an extreme altitude, quickly eroded the skepticism. The cumulative evidence proved too compelling. It was one thing to find a single alignment to the sun, which is easily tracked. It was an entirely different thing to find multiple, precise alignments to fixed stars whose apparent positions shift over long periods due to the Earth's complex motion. This required generations of dedicated observation and intentional planning. Furthermore, critics often dismiss the idea of astronomical genius among the ancient Plains people by pointing to the lack of written records. They argue that complex mathematics requires documentation, but this position fundamentally fails to appreciate the power and accuracy of robust oral tradition. The Bighorn Wheel itself functions as the permanent, non-verbal documentation, translating the abstract mathematics of the cosmos into measurable, unmoving stone. The fact that the wheel continued to be used and maintained by numerous tribes across centuries, even after the original architects were gone, suggests the knowledge of its astronomical function was preserved, even if the precise calculations were simplified into a ceremonial calendar. The controversy ultimately forced a deeper respect for the builders, moving the Bighorn Wheel from the category of simple ceremonial ruin to a masterpiece of indigenous ingenuity and early scientific thought. The skepticism surrounding the Bighorn Wheel is fierce because the implications of its precision are revolutionary. Many traditional archaeologists view the idea of ancient astronomical genius with doubt, arguing that the true function of the wheel was purely ceremonial. They dismiss the perfect stellar alignments as little more than a trick of perspective or sheer coincidence. The counter-argument is statistically simple. If you arrange enough stones in an open field and you search for alignments to every major celestial event, you are bound to find a few connections purely by chance. This view, which dominated thinking for decades, suggested that the builders were simply laying out a sacred space for rituals and vision quests, and any alignment to a star was merely an accident over time. They argued, why attribute high science when simple faith and random chance could explain the pattern? This perspective emphasized the importance of the sun dance and other ceremonies conducted at the site, prioritizing the cultural and spiritual function over the technical or scientific one. It is a debate that still pulses through academic circles, forcing us to weigh cultural tradition against mathematical probability. However, the rigor of archaeoastronomy pushes back hard against the idea of simple coincidence. While it is statistically possible to accidentally align one spoke to the summer solstice, it becomes exponentially less likely to align another spoke perfectly to the heliacal rising of Aldebaran, and a third spoke to the heliacal rising of Sirius, all within the same 80-foot structure. The combined precision of these three major celestial events, occurring at the correct historical period to account for the Earth's wobble, makes the coincidence argument mathematically unsustainable. The odds of randomly capturing the precise rising points of two fixed stars, one of which shifts dramatically over centuries, are astronomically low. Furthermore, the selection of the stars themselves is telling. The builders did not just align to any bright star, they chose two of the most mythologically and calendrically significant stars in the northern sky. This points to intent, not accident. The Bighorn Wheel was undoubtedly a sacred ceremonial space, but its spiritual power was clearly derived from its scientific accuracy. The ancestors of the Crow did not separate faith from fact. They believed the cosmos held divine order, and their ability to measure and predict that order with such stunning accuracy was simply proof of their spiritual alignment. The debate ultimately asked the audience to decide, can you accept that a society without written mathematics achieved the astonishing technological feat of building a permanent star map on a mountain peak, or must you cling to the comfort of coincidence? The stones themselves seem to answer the question, silently pointing to the light of the dog star and the eye of the bull. The stones themselves may hold the ancient secrets, but protecting the Bighorn Wheel in the modern era presents a completely new set of challenges. This monumental astronomical site, a masterpiece of indigenous science, sits exposed on a mountain peak, vulnerable to both natural erosion and human impact. The primary focus for modern caretakers is the preservation and stabilization of the site. Because the wheel is built of rough, unmortared rock, it is constantly buffeted by 90-mile-per-hour winds, heavy snow loads, and the destructive effects of freezing and thawing cycles. Over the centuries, visitors have sometimes moved stones, altering the precise alignments that hold the wheel's scientific data. Modern efforts involve meticulous documentation and stabilization techniques, sometimes requiring the careful replacement of stones that have been displaced, all while minimizing intervention so the site remains authentic. But the challenge of preservation is inseparable from the issue of rights and stewardship. For decades, the site was managed by government agencies, treating it primarily as an archaeological ruin or a tourist attraction. However, the Bighorn Wheel is a profoundly sacred site to the Crow Nation and other neighboring Plains tribes who never ceased their spiritual use of the mountain. In the 1990s, a crucial shift occurred. Following decades of advocacy, the United States Forest Service recognized the deeply sacred nature of the site and formally acknowledged the role of the Crow people as its traditional cultural guardians. This shift in management was not merely bureaucratic, it was a critical recognition of indigenous rights, placing the people whose ancestors built and maintained the wheel at the center of its protection. Today, the management of the Bighorn Wheel is a collaborative effort involving the Forest Service working hand in hand with the Crow tribal representatives. This joint stewardship ensures that the preservation efforts honor both the scientific need for positional accuracy and the spiritual requirement for traditional access and reverence. Visitors are now guided by signs and restrictions that emphasize respect for the site's sacred status. This monumental stone clock is not merely a piece of history to be studied. It is a living, breathing place of worship, demanding that we respect the original intent of the builders to harmonize the earth with the divine order of the cosmos. The ongoing challenge is finding the perfect balance between public access and sacred preservation, ensuring the light of Sirius and Aldebaran continues to be received by the stones for centuries more. The battle for the Bighorn Wheel continues today, a fight against time and the elements. This ancient stone observatory holds the honored designation of a National Historic Landmark, a title that acknowledges its profound cultural and historical significance to the United States. But this official status does not shield it from the relentless environmental forces acting on its exposed mountain perch. The preservation challenges here are immense, far exceeding those of structures protected in drier, lower climates. The wheel is constantly subject to heavy snowfall, extreme temperature shifts, and powerful winds that reach hurricane force. Over the centuries, this natural weather has shifted stones, caused erosion, and slowly undermined the precise geometry that defines the wheel's scientific function. This necessity for physical stabilization drives much of the modern management strategy. Specialized teams must monitor the site constantly, carefully replacing any displaced stones to maintain the integrity of the crucial alignments to Sirius and Aldebaran. However, the greatest threat often comes not from nature, but from human admirers. The wheel's fame as a mystery and a sacred site draws thousands of well-meaning, but often careless visitors every year. Tourism and public access pose a serious risk, though people rarely set out with malicious intent. Even stepping carelessly on the rim or moving a single stone for a photograph disrupts the delicate balance of the ancient structure. Moreover, the site's intense spiritual importance means visitors often leave offerings, such as trinkets, coins, or small flags, which are considered both disrespectful by the traditional custodians and potentially harmful to the fragile ecosystem of the high mountain environment. This tension between public rights and sacred preservation is a constant, ongoing debate. How do we allow the world to appreciate this monumental achievement while simultaneously ensuring its survival as a holy place? The resolution hinges entirely on the recognition of the contemporary indigenous tribes, particularly the Crow Nation, whose ancestors built and maintained the site. Their voices are now central to the wheel's modern stewardship. This means that the interpretation of the wheel is shifting away from a purely archaeological perspective to one rooted in living spiritual tradition. The Crow people are not just historical footnotes, they are the active guardians of this celestial calendar. They are the ones who understand that the wheel is not a ruin, but a continuing place of ceremony. Their involvement ensures that any preservation decision honors the sacred nature of the site, balancing the need for scientific accuracy with the profound spiritual requirements for traditional access and reverence. The very existence of the Bighorn Wheel today is a testament to the enduring power of ancient knowledge when protected by generations of devoted people. The ultimate purpose of the Bighorn Wheel transcends mere timekeeping. This colossal stone mechanism was perfectly calibrated not just for tracking stars, but for regulating the most intense spiritual practice of the Plains tribes, the vision quest. These profound solitary journeys, undertaken by young men and spiritual leaders, were crucial for receiving divine guidance and securing a personal spiritual guardian. The precise astronomical alignments provided the essential sacred timing for these rites of passage. Imagine the spiritual leader having tracked the light of Sirius for weeks, announcing that the moment of perfect cosmic alignment has arrived. That moment, when the star's heliacal rising confirmed the return of the celestial guardian, was deemed the most powerful and auspicious time to undertake a vision quest. The power of the sky, harnessed by the perfectly aligned stones, was at its peak. The entire mountain became a conduit for divine energy. The individuals seeking the vision would trek to the isolated peak, often fasting entirely, enduring the bitter cold, and waiting for contact with the star people. They would often be left alone near the central cairn or one of the exterior sighting stations, placing themselves directly into the lines of stellar power. The stone circles, the spokes, and the central mound were not obstacles. They were spiritual pathways designed to focus the seeker's attention and energy toward the cosmos. The perfect geometric alignment to the stars reinforced the idea that the seeker was not alone. They were standing precisely where the earth and the sky world met, a visible confirmation of cosmic order during an intensely vulnerable, solitary experience. The wheel transformed the mountain peak from a simple geographical location into a spiritual antenna, specifically tuned to receive guidance from the celestial beings embodied by Sirius and Aldebaran. The astronomical precision was just the technical groundwork for a much deeper, life-altering spiritual journey. This connection between stellar timing and the vision quest elevates the Bighorn Wheel to the status of a sacred technological device engineered to facilitate direct communication with the divine. The true genius of the Bighorn Wheel lay in its ability to pinpoint sacred time. For the Crow ancestors and neighboring nations, the vision quest was the single most important act of spiritual life. It was a terrifying, solitary pilgrimage to seek guidance from the spirit world. The wheel ensured these quests were not just random wanderings, but highly calibrated spiritual appointments with the cosmos. The immense effort to track Sirius and Aldebaran, those distant star people, was ultimately about maximizing the spiritual potential of the seeker. By precisely aligning their stones to the heliacal rising of these powerful stars, the builders were essentially creating the perfect spiritual window. This ensured that the questing individual was communing with the star people at the most cosmically significant moment of the year. Imagine the intensity of that belief. The spiritual leaders knew with certainty that on the exact day when the light of the dog star, Sirius, finally cleared the horizon over the designated stone cairn, the spiritual veil between earth and sky world was at its thinnest. This perfect timing was everything. It guaranteed that the seeker's prayers would reach the highest celestial powers. The alignments provided by the wheel were therefore the ultimate spiritual calendar, a technology of faith that dictated when the most profound mysteries could be unlocked. The technical astronomy, the careful calculation of precession and stellar motion, was only the means to achieve this sacred end. It proved that the faith of the builders was not blind. It was experiential, rooted in a deep, verifiable understanding of the perfect order of the universe. They used mathematics to find the moment of the divine, leveraging the power of distant, massive suns to guide the personal journey of the spirit on the cold mountain peak. This ties the immense monumental labor directly back to the deep, personal requirements of their communal faith and survival. The monumental labor invested in the Bighorn Wheel gave it an enduring legacy that stretches far beyond the ceremonial. It was a permanent star map designed not just for the people of its time, but for all future generations. By locking the light of Sirius and Aldebaran into the mountain stone, the ancient builders ensured that their profound astronomical knowledge would survive even if their oral traditions, their history, were disrupted or lost, which tragically they were. This structure is a profound technological achievement built to withstand the ravages of time. Unlike parchment or wood carvings, the colossal stones of the wheel provide an almost eternal record of the sky as it appeared centuries ago. It is a time capsule, patiently waiting for someone to learn how to read its cosmic language. This legacy is not merely academic. The wheel continues to serve as an active, living, sacred site for the Crow Nation and other Plains tribes. The spiritual meaning of the alignments, the inherent power derived from standing at the center of the earth and connecting to the sky world, remains profound. Even today, ceremonies and vision quests are conducted on the mountain, Following the rhythm dictated by the sun and the memory of the stars, the wheel reminds the modern world that sophisticated science did not begin with the European Enlightenment. It confirms that mathematical thought, rigorous observation, and profound engineering were practiced by the inhabitants of the Americas long before contact. The enduring mystery of the Bighorn Wheel forces us to revise our understanding of history, demanding we recognize the complexity and genius of ancient indigenous cultures. It teaches us that the best way to preserve knowledge is sometimes not to write it down, but to embed it permanently into the unmoving landscape, creating a silent, powerful monument to the boundless intelligence of the first skywatchers. Its legacy is a challenge for us to continue listening to the enduring voices of the stars. The enduring message of the Bighorn Wheel is a fierce argument against simplistic views of history. We are left with a permanent and undeniable testament to the scientific and spiritual genius of pre-contact North American cultures. The people who hauled those stones up the unforgiving Wyoming peak were not simply hunters and gatherers. They were sophisticated astronomers who understood the complex mechanics of the cosmos. Their achievement challenges the notion that true scientific inquiry belonged exclusively to the Old World. Here on this bare mountain is proof of an indigenous intellectual tradition that rivals the precision seen anywhere else on Earth. The careful, deliberate alignment with the sun for the summer solstice and the shocking accuracy of the spokes aimed at Sirius and Aldebaran were not acts of faith alone. They were acts of profound mathematical and observational science carried out across generations. This stone structure was built to accomplish one essential goal: to keep their entire culture perfectly synchronized with the most powerful celestial cycles. This synchronization was everything. In a world defined by the harsh, unpredictable reality of the northern plains, the sky offered the only perfect, enduring order. The fixed stars, unlike the fleeting seasons or the shifting herds of buffalo, were reliable. By locking their ceremonial and practical lives to the immense power of Sirius and Aldebaran, the builders ensured continuity and stability in their world. They created a permanent physical foundation that guaranteed eternal realignment, a safeguard against cultural chaos. The Bighorn Wheel is thus an architectural expression of a deep cosmological worldview, one where life on Earth must perfectly mirror the divine order of the heavens, ensuring that the wisdom of the star people guided their survival forever. The wisdom of the Bighorn Wheel is clearly written in stone, yet profound mysteries still beckon from its silent spokes. We have successfully reverse-engineered the alignments to the sun, Sirius, and Aldebaran, confirming the genius of its ancient builders. But what about the remaining spokes? This is the core of the Bighorn enigma today. Only 6 of the 28 radiating spokes have clear astronomical functions that align with known celestial events. That leaves 22 lines of carefully placed stone pointing to something we have not yet deciphered. Were these extra spokes merely structural components designed to divide the lunar month into equal sections, supporting the theory of the wheel as a lunar calendar? Or do they point to other, equally important stars and celestial phenomena that have simply shifted too far over the centuries for us to easily recognize the alignment? Since every fixed star slowly changes its rising point due to precession, the older the structure is, the harder it is to identify the original stellar targets. Perhaps some of those unexplained spokes aligned perfectly with stars that were crucial to the plane's spiritual worldview, stars that were part of constellations known only to the ancient Crow and their neighbors. Imagine a spoke pointing toward Rigel, the foot of Orion, or perhaps a bright star in Lyra or Cygnus. These specific alignments may require the use of older construction dates, pushing the wheel's origins back further than the 300 to 700-year range currently accepted. Another massive unsolved question revolves around the initial construction phase. Archaeological evidence suggests the Bighorn Peak was used for centuries before the visible stone wheel was constructed. Was there an earlier, less permanent wooden structure that preceded the stone one, perhaps built by a different culture whose name is now entirely lost to time? If the Crow ancestors inherited and refined an existing observatory, it would explain the profound depth of astronomical knowledge they possessed. They were not starting from scratch. Instead, they were building upon generations of data collected by previous skywatchers, preserving that knowledge in the permanent stone circle we see today. The Bighorn Wheel is far more than a fixed map of the sky. It is a monumental question waiting for the next generation of researchers to unlock the secrets held in those silent, unexplained stones. The profound mystery of the Bighorn Wheel is not that we found some alignments, but that we still cannot explain most of them. After all the complex calculations confirming Sirius and Aldebaran, the vast majority of the 28 spokes remain stubbornly silent. This leaves open the possibility that the wheel holds even more stellar secrets, pointing to yet unconfirmed targets. Could some of those remaining spokes align with other powerful stars, perhaps Rigel or Capella, whose rising points have simply shifted too far over the centuries for us to easily trace back to the time of construction? Pinpointing older alignments requires even more complex corrections for precession, pushing the potential age of some spokes back thousands of years. This raises the haunting question of whether the structure was built in phases, with the oldest elements aligning to stars that guided the most ancient inhabitants of the mountain, long before the Crow ancestors took stewardship. The wheel itself is quiet about its full inventory of celestial targets, demanding that we continue the painstaking work of reversing the cosmic clock. Beyond the spokes, a massive yet unresolved question surrounds the central cairn, the heart of the wheel. This mound of stone was the observation platform, the sacred nexus where Earth met sky. Did this central structure once contain something more than just piled rocks? It is not uncommon for ceremonial sites, particularly those integral to timekeeping and prophecy, to hold specialized artifacts or perhaps even symbolic records. While extreme weather and centuries of use have likely scrubbed the exposed mountain peak clean of most perishable evidence, it remains highly plausible that the builders once housed critical objects here. Did they place symbolic materials to represent the sun, the moon, or the star people? Were spiritual offerings consistently buried at the apex of the cairn to consecrate the alignment before a critical observation? Unfortunately, the thin soil and centuries of erosion mean that any non-stone artifacts such as wooden markers, rawhide maps, or ritual items are likely long gone. If the builders did encode their astronomical data on materials other than rock, that precious knowledge would have vanished with the artifacts themselves, leaving the Great Stone Circle as the only remaining library. The most intimate and heartbreaking mystery concerns the 28 spokes and the specific ceremonial knowledge tied to them. We know the number 28 links the wheel to the lunar cycle, suggesting a profound calendrical function related to the moon. But how did the ancient philosopher priests use this lunar template in their ceremonies? Did each spoke represent a specific day of fasting, a specific prayer, or perhaps a territory associated with a particular clan? The oral traditions that once explained the precise function of every stone line were the first casualties of cultural disruption and displacement. When the chain of memory was severed, the detailed context for interpreting the wheel vanished, leaving us with only the silent mathematics of the stone. Imagine the wealth of spiritual and scientific knowledge that disappeared when the last elder who knew the song and story of Spoke 17 passed away. This profound loss reminds us that the Bighorn Wheel is not just an astronomical puzzle, it is a monument to the fragility of knowledge preserved only in memory. The Bighorn Medicine Wheel stands today as a permanent, powerful riddle carved into the high spine of the Wyoming mountains. It challenges us to look beyond simple assumptions and to recognize the astonishing intellectual achievement of the ancient peoples of the northern plains. They built a magnificent permanent star map, a celestial clock that perfectly captured the light of the sun, Sirius and Aldebaran. They embedded their deepest spiritual and survival knowledge into the unmoving stone, ensuring that their connection to the star people would endure for all time. What does it feel like to stand in the center of that great circle, knowing that you are tracing the same lines of sight used by spiritual leaders centuries ago? Can you feel the faint echo of their prayers, perfectly timed to the returning light of those distant, ever-watchful stars? The Bighorn Medicine Wheel is truly a silent masterpiece, a final testament to the boundless ingenuity of its ancient builders. This extraordinary structure, high on the mountain spine, forces us to confront the limits of our own historical perspective. We often assume that complex science requires paper, books, and metal tools. The wheel proves otherwise. The perfection of its alignments with the summer sun, Sirius and Aldebaran is scientific truth embedded permanently into the landscape. This was a science passed down through memory, song, and dedication, transforming this remote mountain peak into a functional, massive observatory. The wisdom held here is not just about tracking time, it is about the profound realization that everything in life, from the hunt to the ceremony, must be perfectly aligned with the cosmic order. The indigenous people of the northern plains saw no separation between the spiritual world and the astronomical world. Their ability to calculate the celestial wobble of the earth and lock those calculations into stone centuries in advance is an astonishing intellectual feat. The wheel stands today as a monumental challenge to us all, asking us to recognize indigenous knowledge not as folklore, but as sophisticated, enduring science. It demands a deeper respect for the cultures that preserve this wisdom for generations. We encourage you to seek out more information about the Bighorn Medicine Wheel and the ongoing preservation efforts led by the Crow Nation. Look up at the winter sky and try to find the brilliant light of Sirius or the reddish glow of Aldebaran. When you do, remember the unseen engineers who spent centuries perfecting a structure that captures their light, securing their survival and their spiritual guidance in the enduring architecture of stone. What other forgotten knowledge is waiting for us to rediscover in the rough stones of the ancient world? Thank you for joining us on this journey into the secrets of the sky. The true legacy of the Bighorn Medicine Wheel is written not in ink, but in the perfect geometry of stone and sky. This massive structure, perched high on a desolate Wyoming peak, is a magnificent piece of ancient technology. It is far more than a simple ruin. It stands as a sophisticated calendar, designed by brilliant indigenous engineers to perfectly integrate the most critical aspects of their world, timekeeping and spiritual observance. The builders successfully locked in the rhythm of the solar year, marking the longest day with uncanny precision, but their genius truly shines in the deliberate, powerful alignments to the distant fixed stars, Sirius and Aldebaran. These stars, the brightest suns in the night sky, were not chosen arbitrarily. They were selected for their profound spiritual significance and their crucial role in regulating the annual cycle of survival, particularly the great buffalo hunts and the most sacred ceremonies. The wheel functioned as a permanent stellar observatory, capable of tracking the slow, complex wobble of the earth and recording the light of these celestial deities for generations. The sheer complexity of this undertaking, achieved without metal tools and modern mathematics, remains a profound mystery and a towering testament to the intellectual power of the ancient Plains people. They passed down knowledge that allowed them to embed scientific truth into the rugged landscape. When we look up at the night sky today, seeking the brilliant flash of Sirius or the reddish glow of Aldebaran, we are tracing the exact lines of sight used by those ancient observers centuries ago. We share that same sky, that same cosmic rhythm, and that same impulse to find order in the universe. The Bighorn Wheel bridges the immense distance between us and them, reminding us that knowledge, faith, and survival have always been woven together by the light of the stars. We want to know which alignment you found most compelling, the seasonal comfort of the summer solstice or the spiritual power locked